like most narcissistic relationships, mine started out with love bombing. It's the honeymoon period, idealization stage when, gosh, you're walking on sunshine, everything's wonderful and you can do no wrong, and this person loves and adores you and it's mutual and you feel like you've hit the jackpot. And then at some point, pedestal's pulled out from under you, the rug is pulled out from under you, and you're saying, what is going on?
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So if I ask you to think of a narcissist, you're probably going to come up with that look at me, influencer, celebrity kind of vibe, right? Or maybe if it's more close to home, it's somebody who makes everything about them.
Toxic.
Right? Yeah, those people, right? We know them. They're annoying, yes, but they're not necessarily dangerous. The narcissists we're going to talk about today with our expert, Dr. Valerie Sussman, are dangerous because these are the covert ones. And in her estimation, they're everywhere. These are the people you work with. These are the people you're friends with. This is the person maybe you're even sleeping beside. And the abuse they give you is more chronic. But there's a way to spot it if you could spot them. There's a way to manage it and neutralize them and move on if they're hurting you and you can heal. So let's have that conversation with somebody who's a foremost expert on narcissism, the bad kind. Well, is there a good kind?
That's
the worst kind.
None of it
How about
is.
that?
None of it is really good.
Dr. Valerie Sussman. Valerie, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, Valerie. So good to have you here. Just to kind of reel it back to the past, you had a dramatic life change at 50, right? You left your marriage and your pediatric practice. What finally made you realize something had to change? Why did that happen?
I was in a narcissistic marriage for 20 years, unbeknownst to me, because I was married to a covert narcissist, and they are the wolves in sheep's clothing. After 20 years of emotional abuse, emotional turmoil, a roller coaster relationship, my ex moved out 4 times and came back, which is, believe it or not uncommon in these kinds of relationships. The 4th time, I thought to myself, it had been going on for 6 years at that point, the in and out part. And I had 3 sons. I had watched my ex's father do this to his wife. I was raising 3 sons at the time, and I thought, oh my gosh, I am teaching and showing my sons that this is okay, and they will take it to the next generation and put their future wives through what I have gone through. That was really the clincher.
Oh, I'm glad you did that for them. And then you became an expert on narcissism, right?
There's a common thing that happens with survivors of narcissistic abuse, and it's sort of a joke that we essentially get honorary PhDs in narcissism because we're so desperate for answers and so desperate to figure out what happened, why it happened, why me, what did I do wrong, was it me, what do I need to learn from this? And we become experts. And I think that, combined with my background in medicine, kind of took me down that path.
What were some of the first signs that made you realize that you were dealing with someone with a narcissistic personality disorder?
Here's the thing. Like a lot of people, I did not realize it while I was in the relationship. And this is really scarily common. So you would think that you'd start seeing the signs and reading the clues and figuring it out. I didn't figure it out like a lot of survivors until afterwards, when you start sort of doing the postmortem, so to speak. And sadly, we had gone to 2 different, in the course of 20 years, 2 different marriage counselors. Neither one picked up on the fact that my ex was a narcissist and that what I was going through was narcissistic abuse. They can be that good, especially in couples counseling. And I think what happened for me, crazily enough, at that time, I didn't even realize there was such a thing called emotional abuse, but I call it the Google test. If you're online asking Google, what does it mean when my partner does this? Or is it normal for my partner to do this? Or why is he or she doing this? That's kind of a red flag.
What are the signs, though, for the person who's trying to determine if he or she is in that same relationship?
I would say the number one sign for anybody is the sense that something's not right. It's a sense of unease where the pieces aren't fitting together. You're missing something, you just don't know what it is. And I think that's the first sign for everybody, because most of us don't realize our partner is a narcissist. Nobody most people don't intentionally marry a narcissist unless you're after money, fame, or something else. So for me, it was a sense that something's not right. Something's not adding up, and like most narcissistic relationships, mine started out with love bombing. It's the honeymoon period, idealization stage when, gosh, you're walking on sunshine, everything's wonderful and you can do no wrong. And this person loves and adores you and it's mutual and you feel like you've hit the jackpot. And then at some point, pedestal's pulled out from under you, the rug is pulled out from under you, and you're saying, what is going on? And again, it's that sense of something's not right. And in my situation, my ex started criticizing me, nitpicking, stupid things. Why do you always wear sweatpants around the house? Why aren't you wearing makeup when you drive the kids to school? Silly sorts of things. So the nitpicking, the criticizing, the indifference, the neglect, that was the first sign for me.
Is that a sign of narcissism or just
being a dick?
I was trying to think of a better way to say it, but that's the best way to say it.
It is a sign of narcissism.
Yeah.
And because in a normal relationship, you go from, we all have a honeymoon blissful period in the beginning, and then it eases into something deeper and more meaningful, and you get to know each other, and it becomes more intimate. You share vulnerabilities and those sorts of things. It doesn't devolve into a sense of what is wrong with me. I actually said to my ex at one point, do you not like me anymore? That's not normal. And that is, narcissists do that. And in a healthy relationship, yeah, we have times when we're just, oh God, my partner's driving me crazy. And, I wish he or she would do this or not do that. But it's not a barrage of criticism and a sense of, you're not saying, does this person really love me?
Yeah.
Right. You're questioning it. Can you tell us your definition of narcissism, if you don't mind?
And as Mark alluded to earlier, it's not as simple as people think. It's not always the show-offy braggarts, the politicians, the movie stars, the celebrities. So the way I think about narcissism is I think about a narcissist as a self-absorbed, self-important person who has a constellation of personality traits and engages in certain manipulative behaviors with the intent of proving to themselves and to the world that they are special. We think of narcissists as these, grandiose, flamboyant people who seem on top of the world and they are the best at what they do. But underneath that is a real shame and a sense of inadequacy, a very, very fragile ego. And so what they do is they engage in a certain tactics to make sure that they are getting what's called narcissistic supply. And what narcissistic supply is, it's their drug of choice. They need it. It's the attention, the admiration, the praise, the prestige, the recognition on the one hand. But the other piece, and this goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, there's the danger piece, and that is the need for dominance, power, and control, which are the textbook definitions of abuse, essentially, those desires. What they do is they find people who will support their, inflated ego and build them up and let them hide behind that facade of amazingness.
But some are covert, some you don't know, some are more noticeable than others?
Nobody really knows the true prevalence of narcissism because so many fly under the radar. So the covert narcissists, and my ex was one, they're the good guys, the nice gals, the helpful neighbor, the wonderful doctor, the rabbi, the priest, whomever. They're not the ones who are out there saying, look at me, or, abusing their power overtly anyway. They seem nice in the beginning, and they're the snakes in the grass. They're the wolves in sheep's clothing, and they can sell you, and they do. They're good at it.
So what would you tell someone who realizes they're in a narcissistic relationship?
If they know that their partner is a narcissist, and I would say this, you may or may not know your partner is a narcissist, because let me just backtrack a second. And I'm a doctor, so I'm all about diagnoses and all this. However, when it comes to narcissism, that's not necessarily the case. And the reason is because to get a formal diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder, which is the psychiatric manual, the DSM-5, you actually have to be diagnosed by a mental health professional. And you can probably guess how many narcissists actually go to a mental health professional saying, I need help. there's something wrong with me. They don't think anything's wrong with them. And even in the scope of a relationship, if you're in couples counseling, say, like in my case, very often the therapist doesn't pick up on the fact that one partner is a narcissist. So having that formal label doesn't matter. And I think what I would tell somebody who is pretty sure their partner is a narcissist, because if they're saying that, it's not just the run of the mill, oh, you're being a narcissist, stop being a narcissist, which we hear all the time. They've probably done some reading and done some research and are going, oh my God, yes, but checks the box. Yep. So I think you have to be realistic. If you're in that relationship, I think you have to really look at the relationship itself and ask yourself, what am I getting out of this relationship? What is keeping me here? Realizing that narcissists have a very limited capacity for change. Yeah, can they move the needle a little bit and the extreme ones probably not. But if they're in that middle spectrum, can the needle move a little bit with some intervention? And if they're wanting to, yeah, maybe. But more often than not, they get worse as they get older. And as relationships, abuse does tend to escalate in most relationships, as we know. So I think you really need to be realistic about what you're dealing with and what the hopes are for the relationship. The thing that keeps a lot of people in narcissistic relationships is something they call hopium. And that's a term. And my book is all about the terms and terminology of narcissism. And hopium is essentially just what it sounds like. It's
That's a good word.
It's great.
It's addictive hope.
Yeah.
And it's what we cling to, and it's what keeps us hooked into these relationships. And if you are banking, and I was banking on my partner's potential. And if you're banking on your partner getting better, or you can love them enough to change them, or, once they see the light, they're going to get it. Or if I say it enough times or in enough different ways, it's going to click. It doesn't. So if you are hooked on hopium, as I say, you need to be really realistic about what the possibilities are for this relationship and what is the likelihood that it's actually going to deteriorate and not improve.
I think I've heard some experts say some people stay in narcissistic relationships because they've done so much work. Sometimes these people can be very passionate and fun and, charismatic. And then they work on the bad parts thinking, okay, the next person that walks into this person's life is going to get all my hard work. I worked so hard on it, right? So I think some people just try and stick around to try and see if that person will absolutely change, which won't happen, right?
Stacey, you nailed it, because one of the things two things that resonate with what you just said for me. The sunk cost fallacy, right? Well, I've put all this energy into this relationship, whether it's a narcissistic relationship or not.
Right.
I've put all this time and energy in. I'm not going to walk away from this investment now. So there's that piece, which you kind of alluded to. There is definitely the piece of this person's going to move on and the next person's going to get the good, Dr. Jekyll, not the Mr. Hyde that I
right.
got. You're going to get Dr. Jekyll. In the course of a narcissistic relationship, they're experts at blame shifting. They do not do accountability. So you end up taking, they project everything onto you. So you think, it's me, I'm the, Taylor Swift, it's me, I'm the it's me, I'm the problem, right? You make the assumption that they're going to leave this relationship. And now that you're not in the relationship, all that wonderful potential that you saw in the beginning is going to be materialized. And that they're going to get the good stuff.
Yep. It's exactly what I was saying. Yeah.
So let me take you back to something you said earlier. You talked about love bombing being stage one. So to speak. So there's a cycle here, right? And I know you have other things like moving the goalposts and some other things. Is it linear, or are there just components that, like gaslighting, and I don't know what hoovering is. I'd love you to explain that.
Okay, well, you just gave me a perfect segue, because hoovering is the fourth step in a narcissistic relationship. Typically, the cycle is linear. I think you can think of it in the same way as grief, in a sense that it's linear, but it's also cyclical and can bounce around.
Sure.
The typical narcissistic relationship starts with love bombing, which, like we talked about, and that is where, you're in heaven. Everything's wonderful, right? The second stage is devaluing. And that is where the nitpicking, the finding fault, the criticizing, the neglect, that comes in stage two. That being said, narcissists will, even in the devaluing stage, they will do what they call intermittent reinforcement, which is they will sprinkle in love bombing and times of attention and affection, breadcrumbing, they call it. So you sort of think, okay, if I hang in here, even though he's not treating me really well right now, this is just a phase. And I know we're going to get back to what it really was and is and could be. And that's the love bombing, which is all a fantasy and it's all an illusion. Then the third stage is what they call the discard. This is where the narcissist either, I mean, it's just what it sounds like. They either leave you for another, they may neglect you, they may completely ignore you, and all of their focus goes into something or somebody else. And then the fourth step, which doesn't happen all the time, but in most it does, and that's hoovering. And that is where, and it's based on the Hoover vacuum. Now it is Dyson, I guess, but back in the days it was Hoover. And that's where they suck you back in.
Oh,
and
jerks.
How do they suck you back in?
Yeah.
Love bombing.
Love bombing. I knew it. So one big cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's crazy. So can you, if you recognize that, I mean, probably some, let's say women recognize that, or men recognize that their spouses are doing that, but it's that love bombing, right? It gets you back in every time. I didn't mean it. Oh, you're beautiful. You're so special.
So sorry. Best.
I was being thoughtless.
Human nature is we believe what we want to believe.
Yeah.
And we all tell ourselves stories. And if you believe your partner is the person they initially presented themselves to be, that's the story we want to believe. We want to buy into that. We all want love. And the person they present themselves to be in the beginning is so amazing that we want that. And, you know, I remember before I realized my ex was a narcissist, and I was seeing a therapist on my own, and I remember her, and she had not met him, so I don't fault her for not recognizing the narcissism piece. But at one point she said, you know, Valerie, you can't build a relationship on potential. And that really struck a chord for me, because that's what we do in narcissistic relationships.
I'm sure that there's someone listening right now who is a narcissist but has no idea. Can we give them any like hints as to whether or not
self-help?
Yeah, whether or not, or maybe one of us are. Do we know?
Oh,
I don't think so.
Give us a self-assessment.
Yeah,
let's figure out if Stacy.
You're not. Here's the thing. Narcissism exists on a spectrum. Right. Do we all have narcissistic traits? Absolutely. Do we all at times act narcissistically? Of course we do. You know, when times are going tough, when times are going really well. It's my wedding. I'm the star of the show. I'm sick. You should take care of me. Whatever. We all act narcissistically. And it's a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you've got the overgivers and the people who are so willing to be subservient and subjugated on one end, the extreme codependence, let's say. And then on the other end, you've got the malignant narcissist bordering on sociopathy who it's all about them all the time. And then most of us fall somewhere in the middle.
What's your words for the younger set? Let's say teenager, early 20s, they're finding their partner. How do they stay out of these toxic relationships?
In the ideal world, they would stay out of them, but you and I know that that's may or may not happen, because when we're young, we're figuring it all out and we don't have experience. Number one is to go slowly in relationships. Narcissists are known to pressure their partners. And so if you are feeling pressured in whatever way, whether, you know, obviously sexually, pressured to give up activities you enjoy, or to not spend time with certain friends, or to dress a certain way. So I think going slowly is always a good thing. And then I think so much of it with these relationships, with any toxic relationship, whether it's a narcissist or not, it comes down to, how is this relationship making me feel? A relationship should be a port in the storm, right? If you're in a relationship that feels like a storm, something's off. Now, that partner may not be a narcissist, but something's off. If you are finding yourself, you know, making yourself small, or giving up things you love, and I'm speaking for young people because this is common, especially with young people. You know, you're giving up things that you enjoy, or friendships, or changing things about yourself that weren't a problem for you previously. You feel like you're walking on eggshells. And this is true of narcissistic relationships in general. Like you're having to placate your partner, or like nothing you do is good enough. In any relationship, and in young relationships, you will see all of those things.
Love bombing. Everybody, I think, enjoys that. It's almost a narcissist anesthetic, right? They get you in that gooey place. And are there ways to understand when it's happening? Is there some sort of a flag that you can say, oh, this is love bombing, I know it?
Yes and no, because as you said, most of us love that feeling.
Yeah, it's nice.
Who doesn't want to be adored, attended to, and have somebody who's, really attuned to you and whatnot. So I think that the differential with love bombing and a healthy, normal honeymoon idealization period, which we all do have, is the speed. It goes really fast. They want to hook you and hook you early. The feeling of pressure feels too good to be true. But then there's also God, this is moving awfully quickly, and maybe a sense of, whoa, maybe too much too soon, which is sort of the hallmark of love bombing. And you may not realize it while you're in the love bombing period. Honeymoon periods or idealization periods in a healthy relationship do ease into greater depth. If you then go find yourself in the devaluation period, then you can kind of look back and go, oh, that was love bombing. But it's hard to recognize initially.
What's the concept around moving the goalposts?
Moving the goalposts is one of the tricks and tactics narcissists use to keep you hooked on hope. It's part of what they call future faking, which is another term. And it's, well, if things are going well, I will marry you. We'll move in together. These sort of dangling carrots, so to speak. If you perform well enough, you will get this reward. And you're never going to meet that goal because the goalposts keep moving. So you're constantly off balance. It's a control.
Yeah.
You are constantly striving to perform and do more and do better. And it's one of the ways the narcissist just dangles the carrots and says, keep trying, keep trying.
So you've actually healed yourself from this relationship. One of the ways you did that is through art. Mm-hmm. You have some of your projects behind you. I can see them right now. So tell me about that. How did that help you?
What happens in a narcissistic relationship is we subjugate our feelings, and everything becomes about the narcissist, and we lose touch with who we are. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't know what I feel. I don't know who I am. I don't know what matters to me. All of those things get lost in a narcissistic relationship. One of the great things about art, I actually fell into it organically. I was not saying, I'm going to heal through art. I knew nothing about art therapy, or that was not part of my medical training at all. I used to do a lot of scrapbooking, and I started saying, I'm going to make myself like a little scrapbook that's about me. It was a 3-dimensional scrapbook. It was actually a little curio box, which was really fun. And each of the sections, it was something on what do I value, what's important to me, what have I accomplished, what would I like to accomplish, those sorts of things. It was my way of finding my way back to myself, which is really, really, really important if you've been in a narcissistic relationship. Well, these pieces are all for my book, which is Decoding Narcissism, which is essentially an A to Z guide to everything narcissism, including all those terms that I've been throwing out. I don't know if you can see it.
I see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
goalposts.
Yeah. Okay, you got the goalpost. So this is the groundhog, because I was talking about the repeating cycle. So being in a narcissistic relationship is like living Groundhog Day, and you can see the gaslights on top.
Amazing.
It's like everything captured in one here.
It's all symbolic. The gray rock symbolizes the term gray rock, which is one of the techniques that's recommended if you have to deal with the narcissist. You go gray rock. And what that means is because narcissists want to get a rise out of you. They want to get a reaction. They want to trigger you. They want to show they still have that power over you. Sure. And you go gray rock. What going gray rock is, just like it sounds, you don't engage. It's just the facts, ma'am. If you have to communicate, say you work with somebody or you're co-parenting, you may not be able to go no contact. you go gray rock, and it's you just become really boring and uninteresting, and they decide they're going to get their narcissistic supply elsewhere. So that's what all that part
I love
is. Yeah.
that. That was just one letter.
I love that. I actually have heard that term.
Can't wait to see that. Have you?
Term before, and I think, what do you tell the people that just don't want a gray rock? Because I imagine that's frustrating when all of a sudden you have to be unresponsive and they're being abusive.
It's really, really hard. I think the first thing I would tell them is disengaging is really, really hard. And it gets way easier with practice. Same with boundaries. I mean, same with boundaries. If you're not a person that's comfortable with putting up boundaries and being assertive, it's really hard. It gets easier. And you probably will mess up a few times and get triggered and react and respond. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And then you go back to the drawing board and you go, okay, I see where he tried to do this. And damn, I took the bait again.
It's so hard being your higher self, isn't it?
It sure is.
I know that for a fact. Oh my gosh. Well, this is wonderful. What's next for you, Valerie? What's on your docket? More books?
More books. Yeah. Curious Minds and Creative Minds Never Sleep. This book I'm hoping to put out later this year. I'm working on 2 more books on this topic, and then I'm going to move on. I'm working on a book now that has to do with recognizing the red flags in a narcissistic relationship. So that's a more traditional type book, but it also has my crazy art in it. Maybe a memoir type, like a visual memoir, also with my art. I'm gearing more towards the art than writing. I volunteer as a mentor to ex-foster youth. So that's my community work that I do.
Wonderful.
I have one quick final question. Does your former husband recognize and accept or own as in your words, that you suffered the ravages of narcissistic abuse? No.
No. Narcissists are perennial victims. I've not talked to him about it. I have no idea if he knows what I'm doing. I don't care.
Interesting.
This is not a revenge project. It's not a vengeance project. I hope he doesn't hear about it. Would he own that? No, absolutely not. In his world, everybody thinks he's great.
Well, this has been amazing. I've learned so much.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We do appreciate it.
It's
been very insightful.
I hope it helps some people who are wanting more information or questioning or I think it's a very complicated topic and very complex, and I think the topic of covert narcissism is coming more to the forefront, and I think it's something people need to be aware of, because they really are the snakes in the grass, and they are all around us, and they fool us.
Yeah, it's an important conversation because it's something that we all hear a lot about and know very little about.
It's been awesome.
You have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you soon. And thank you guys for watching as always.